Remembrance Day honours those who served to defend our democratic freedoms and the way of life. Every year, around November 11, we fall silent for 2 minutes to pay tribute to the men and women who fought to serve the UK and Ireland in many different conflicts around the world. This year, we can also use it to recognise those in countries where conflict is ongoing, regardless of their faith, culture or background. Today we will reunite to remember those who gave the ultimate sacrifice and those innocent civilians whose lives are at risk due to the conflict and act of terrorism.
On Remembrance Day, we bring to mind not just those people who fought and died in World War I 100 years ago, but also those affected by World War II and by other wars since 1945. By November the 11th, it was at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month that World War I ended in 1918. At 11 o'clock on Monday morning, the guns fell silent, the killing stopped. This was armistice, an agreement to stop fighting. When World War I was over, people wanted to mark the event on this special day.
Often we meet people who, from their manner, job or circumstance, may seem to be ordinary people with ordinary lives, yet there may actually be someone very extraordinary. For example, do you know the story of the school janitor who was discovered to be one of the bravest men of the First World War? His name was Fred Luke.
A schoolboy cadet who was at the High School of Glasgow in 1954 later recalled how he discovered a story of remarkable bravery shown by the janitor he saw every day. We were at our school Remembrance Day service, all lined up awaiting inspection by 2 visiting senior army officers, when instead of walking over to greet our head teacher, the 2 officers walked over and started talking to the school janitor. They asked him, "What's your name and what did you get that medal for?" The janitor said, "Driver Luke, sir, Mons, 1914. The head teacher walked over to ask what was going on. The officer replied, "It's been my privilege to shake the hand of one of the bravest men in the British Army. This man won the Victoria Cross, saving the guns at Mons aged 18, the age of some of the boys on parade today."
Fred Luke was wearing the Victoria Cross, a medal awarded for exceptional acts of bravery carried out under direct enemy fire. Watch this video to learn what Fred did to earn his medal.
This picture was taken in November 1937. It shows the janitor of the old High School of Glasgow ringing the school bell. He is wearing a top hat and tails. It is obviously a special event, but then, the janitor was a very special man. His name was Frederick Luke. Most people called him Fred. However, in 1914, he had gained a great deal of fame as Driver Luke. He was born in 1896 in a small village in Hampshire, England. He had 4 brothers and 8 sisters, 2 of whom died as infants. After he left school, Fred worked on a farm. In 1913, he decided to join the British Army. He was 17 years old. A year later, he was a member of the British Expeditionary Force. Fred was one of around 100,000 British soldiers who had been sent to France at the outbreak of the Great War. He was serving in the Royal Field Artillery as a driver. In 1914, the guns were not pulled by vehicles. They were pulled by horses. Fred's work on farms meant that he was well suited to handling horses. The opening months of the First World War were very difficult for the British Army. Although they were very well trained, they lacked the numbers of the Germans. As a result, they were forced to retreat. On August 26, 1914, the British commander decided to stand and fight. He hoped that it would deliver a stopping blow, under cover of which we could retire. His men were exhausted after days of constant marching and fighting. The battle was fought near a small French village called Le Cateau. These days, the battle is often forgotten or overlooked for other bigger battles. For Fred, it was to be one of the most important days of his life.
Le Cateau was a very old-fashioned battle. It was fought in the same way that the battles of the 19th century. The guns of Fred's unit were very close to the front line. This meant that they were able to give a great deal of support to the foot soldiers. It also meant that they were exposed to enemy fire. Fred's unit was placed in what one historian has described as the hottest spot on the battlefield. Very quickly it found itself under fire. The first shot was fired at around 6 a.m. This continued until Fred's unit withdrew around 2 p.m. We can get some idea of what happened from the following extract. It was part of a diary kept by one of Fred's colleagues. He wrote, "There was little cover or hiding place. Terrible shells came over in sixes and were bursting all over the place and over the tops of our guns and wagon lines, with plenty of bullets flying about. Man after man was becoming wounded, and horses were being killed, and batteries were being smashed to pieces. I just don't think there was a man on the field who did not say his prayers for a general retirement to be ordered. By early afternoon the situation was very serious. Ammunition was running low and the order was given to retreat. The problem for the artillery was how to get their guns away. The Germans were only a few hundred metres away. Captain Reynolds, an officer in Fred's unit, asked for volunteers to help him recover 2 of the guns that were in danger of being captured by the Germans. Fred and a number of others immediately volunteered. 2 teams of horses were assembled. Each team had 6 horses and a small carriage called a limber. This was used to tow the gun and also store shells. Each team also had 3 drivers who controlled a pair of horses. Fred was one of the drivers. They were led up the road to the battlefield, at first at a slow trot and then eventually at the gallop. They dashed past advancing Germans and shell fire. They reached the guns and quickly began to attach the guns to the horse teams. As they moved away, the centre driver of Fred's team was shot. However, they were able to escape past the Germans. The second team was not as lucky as Fred's. The Germans shot down the horses and crew, and the gun had to be abandoned. However, no one had really believed that any of the guns could be got away. What had been seen as a hopeless task had been accomplished.
For his bravery, driver Frederick Luke was awarded the Victoria Cross. The Victoria Cross recognises acts of extreme bravery carried out under direct enemy fire. The Victoria Cross was created on 29th of January 1856. Since then, 1,354 people have been awarded the Victoria Cross. It is handmade, traditionally, using bronze taken from a gun captured in the Crimean War. The Victoria Cross was deliberately intended to have little actual value. Its value lies in what it stands for and what people do to earn it. Be extremely brave. The inscription on the Victoria Cross is, for valour, a traditional word for bravery. It was personally chosen by Queen Victoria, after whom the medal was named. The Queen turned down the first suggestion, for the brave, explaining that all her soldiers were brave. Fred Luke was awarded his medal in December 1914. He was fighting in the trenches when he was told that the King wanted to see him, and his friend driver Drain, who had been awarded the Victoria Cross. With no time to be cleaned up, he was pushed into the King's inspection line. The King told him not to lose his medal, but to give it to his commanding officer to send home. Fred continued to serve in the army for the rest of the war. Although wounded, he was to survive. He was lucky. It was then estimated that of every 1,000 British soldiers who went to France in 1914, only around 30 had avoided becoming casualty by Christmas 1914. Fred left the army after the war. However, he was not finished with serving his country. During the Second World War, he was to serve as a gunner in the RAF. In 1981, Fred was at a reception in his honour. The general giving a speech remarked that he hoped that they would never go to war again. Luke's reply was, "Well, if you do, and you need any help, just give me a call." Frederick Luke died at his home in Glasgow on March 11th, 1983.
How you choose to remember is up to you. Some people choose to wear a poppy, but this is never compulsory. When and how you choose to remember is a reflection of your individual experiences and personal memories.
This Remembrance Day, we want to make sure every soldier is remembered, British and colonial subjects alike. Let us end with a poem from an anonymous black soldier which tells the experience of the war. The bugle called and forth we went, to serve the crown our backs were bent, and build whate'er must be done, but near to no fire, angry gun. No heroes we were, no, not one. With deepest lament we did our job. Despite the shame our manhood robbed, we built and fixed again, to prove our worth as proud black men and hasten sure the Kaiser's end. From Secota to Seafield Square, across to France the conflict there. Vive les gens and Palace Pearl, the number to 600 strong. Stripped to the waist in sweat and chest, mid-day's reprieve, much needed rest. We dug and hauled and lifted high from trenches deep towards the sky. Non-fighting troops, and yet we die. The peace restored, the battle won. Black sweat and toil had the Hun. Black blood was spilled, black bodies maimed. For medals brave, no black was named. Yet proud we were, our pride unshamed. But time will bring forth other wars. Then give to us more daring chores, that we may prove our courage strong, preserve the right, repel the wrong, and proud we will sing the battle song.
They shall grow not old, as that we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. At 11 o'clock on Remembrance Sunday, there's a 2-minute silence to remember those who died in war. Ours is not a silent world. There is noise around us, so silence is special. Silence helps us to stop thinking about what is going on right now, or what we have to do next. Silence lets us pause to reflect. We will now watch a short video on the last posts as we remember all those who have fallen in conflict. We will then hold our 2-minute silence. There will be a silent video on how to accompany this.
As a sign of respect, members of our pupil leadership team will lay wreaths. I will then lead you in a time for reflection and a short prayer. In times of conflict, ordinary people may find themselves performing extraordinary acts. Our acts of remembrance, big or small, public or private, are valuable to remember those who have risked and lost their lives. Let us pray for those who suffer as a result of conflict and ask that God may give us peace. We remember all the servicemen and women who have died in violence and war. For all members of the armed forces who are in danger today, remembering family, friends, and all those who hope for their safe return, may God grant them peace. Amen. Thank you to everybody for joining us for our remembrance ceremony, lest we forget.